Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, my friends, this is the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast, and I am your host, Rob Recluse, and welcome to podcast number 13, Lucky 13. I hope everybody's doing fantastic out there. So what are we going to do here today? I found this particular LP, I think the first year that I was really collecting Vintage Edmonton music in earnest, and I literally squealed with delight when I found it. And I know, I know, but I did. I literally squealed with delight when I found it, based on the cover itself and the title of it, which I'll give out right now. And it's called Ukrainian Night at the Norwood Legion, featuring the sounds of Radomsky's Orchestra, quote unquote, live. I'm guessing this is about 1977, 1978. Norwood Legion is literally right down the street from me, about 6-7 blocks down the street, right in that general area. But it's in my neighborhood, so I was pleased as punch to get this record. I was a little disappointed when I actually put the needle on the turntable for reasons that I'll explain in a little bit. But yeah, just really excited. As people are sick about hearing now, I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio has a huge polka scene, really the biggest one, certainly in the Midwest. Probably outrivals Chicago's and Milwaukee's, which are two of the other big cities up there. But a huge scene and a huge population of Eastern Europeans, Slovenians, Ukrainian, not unlike the Edmonton region and Central Alberta, East Central Alberta certainly. So I grew up with polka music. My polka music that I grew up with was a little bit different from what the Radomsky's Orchestra play. They play more traditional style polka music. The polka music that I grew up listening to was Slovenian polka, Frankie Yankovic, a lot faster, real heavy on the accordion, real heavy on the banjo, which is a little bit different from this polka music that the Radomsky's Orchestra plays, but nonetheless, awesome stuff. And again, the reason I was a little bit disappointed by this when I put the needle on the turntable, I thought this was literally going to be a live performance, but what it turns out to be, I'm fairly sure anyway, is a live in the studio performance or a simulated live performance, just certainly on the lack of any kind of crowd noise whatsoever. I'm going to say it's going to be live in the studio with the generous financial backing of the Norwood Legion and certain people at the Norwood Legion to get the album made. Again, I'm assuming, but I think it's a pretty good assumption. But nonetheless, this is a great example, a great snapshot of some hardcore, old school, traditional Ukrainian music. This is the real stuff, folks, and they definitely would have been playing this at the Norwood Legion in 1977. Also comes with a MC, which I'll let him explain himself to when we start putting on the record. So the first song that I'm going to play for you today is going to be the introduction that you would have heard in 1977, 1978 at the Norwood Legion, listening to the Radomsky's Orchestra, Mitro Radomsky, who is the MC, the Big Chiefs, the leader of the band. This is the introduction and a song called This Way, That Way Polka. So this is Radomsky's Orchestra live, air quotes, live at the Norwood Legion from 1978-ish, doing This Way, That Way Polka here on the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the Ukrainian Night at the Norwood Legion. It is the wish of all those involved in planning and organizing Ukrainian Night that your evening be one filled with merriment throughout, and that you just get out there and have a good time. Добрий вечір, шановні гості. Вітаємо вас. Дякую вам, що ви прийшли на наш український вечірок. Ми би хотіли, щоб ви забавилися і потанцювали до Дмитро Radomsky і його оркестра. Without further ado, may I present our featured entertainment for this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mitro Radomsky and his orchestra.
Welcome back to the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast. That was Radomsky's Orchestra with a song called This Way, That Way Polka. Now, the next one I'm going to play for you is a dedication, which are quite a few on this record, by the way. This one is for Mr. Charlie Thompson and a song called Golden Earrings, with the MC calling it out, keeping things moving along, peppy moving along. So this is Radomsky's Orchestra with a song called Golden Earrings on the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast.
Our next number we'd like to send out to the Chair Hill Cowboy, Charlie Thompson, and it's called Golden Earrings.
Welcome back to the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast. That was Radomsky's Orchestra with a song called Golden Earrings here on the classic, for me anyway, the Ukrainian Night Live at the Norwood Legion from 1977. So I'm going to get to the second side now, which breaks it into two clean sides, two different sets, I would imagine. And the next one I'm going to play for you is a song called Mike and Mary's Polka, dedicated to the late Mike Uwasek. And I'm going to back it right up, right next to it, with another one called The Garden Waltz, dedicated to, and I'm not even going to try to tell you who it's dedicated to. I'm going to let that MC, who is paid handsome money to do this, actually say that beautiful name that it's dedicated to. So this is the Radomsky's Orchestra, starting things off with a song called Mike and Mary's Polka and backing it up with the Garden Waltz here on the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast.
Welcome back to the second half of this evening's program. We're going to start off with a number entitled Mike and Mary's Polka, and it is very fitting that this number be played in memory of two very fine people, lovers of Radomsky music, the late Mr. and Mrs. Mike Iwashuk. Mitro, if you will. Once again, it's dedication time, and this time we are sending it out to some people from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. To Elmer and Iris Sarienko and their son Owen, here's the next waltz.
Welcome back to the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast. That was Radomsky's Orchestra with a song called The Garden Waltz. And right before that, we had the beginning or the opening of the second act, or the second half, I guess, of the record, a song called Mike and Mary's Polka. Now, a couple of interesting things about this particular album and where it was recorded, if it was recorded in a studio or at Norwood Legion. The person who was the engineer for this album with a guy by the name of Joe Kozak. And if you listen to the podcast at any point, you know that this is, I won't say an all Joe Kozak all the time kind of podcast. It just kind of works out to the point where this guy was around. You know, he was a mover and shaker in the Edmonton music scene. He recorded in his own Project 70 studios, and also pretty much where people asked him to record. And is another example of this. He actually was the engineer for this particular album. So kudos to Joe Kozak once again for being there in Edmonton history, in Edmonton music history anyway. So the last song on the album that I'm going to play for you is the final song on the album. This is a song called Come Spring Foxtrot. Gets it out into an excellent end to a great night at the Norwood Legion. And again, this is the classic slice of old school vintage Edmonton entertainment circa 1977, 1978 that you would have seen in your neighborhood. In my neighborhood, which is the Eastwood neighborhood, this is where I would be on a Friday night or a Saturday night. Boom, I'd be down there at the Norwood Legion listening to this stuff. Being the coolest person there, of course. But nonetheless, I would be out there listening to it. And I love this one so much. So this is Radomsky's Orchestra with a song called Come Spring Foxtrot off the Ukrainian Night live at the Norwood Region. Radomsky's Orchestra here on the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast.
This almost brings us to the end of this evening's program. But before we conclude, I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of Heritage Records to thank everyone for making the recording of this album possible. Thanks to Joe Kozak, our recording engineer, and special thanks to the orchestra, Bill Maliko, Walter Moser, George Daniluk, George Moronic, and Terry Kulka, and last but not least, Mitra Radomsky. But before the orchestra packs up their instruments, one last request. Mitro, we ask that you play a number which has made you known far and wide. It is a special request from us all. Would you please play Come Spring Foxtrot? Thank you. This is Ken Huckelak saying good night all, and have a safe journey home.
Welcome back to the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast. That was Radomsky's Orchestra from the Ukrainian Night live at the Norwood Legion with a song called Come Spring Foxtrot, which was also the end of the LP and the end of the podcast. Again, I was a little disappointed that it wasn't a live, quote-unquote, live performance, but an incredible simulation anyway of a Radomsky's Orchestra set that you would have heard at the Norwood Legion in 1977 or thereabouts. So I hope everybody enjoyed that, and especially if you're a fan of Ukrainian music like I am. So again, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, yes, I am on iTunes. Yes, you can subscribe to me on iTunes. Please do so. Subscribe to me on iTunes. And I also want to say that I've also started a new website that is kind of a companion piece to Vintage Edmonton and the Vintage Edmonton Music Podcast. And it's called, shockingly enough, so that it deals in obscure news from the past, called News Obscure, which is www.newsobscure.com. It's some stuff that I've compiled over the years while I've done the Vintage Edmonton thing, and I've always gotten a kick out of some of these particular stories, especially stories that have come true 30, 40, 50, 60 years later than when they were actually reported on. So I hope you like that. That is News Obscure, www.newsobscure.com. Until next time, I'll see you later.